Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi, my name is Rorenado, and I write a lot about video game preservation. And today I want to talk to you about a game that kind of means a lot to me, and as well as its relationship to game preservation, and that's Impact Winter. Impact Winter released in May 2017 on Steam, and in April 2018 on PS4 and Xbox One. And unfortunately, it was delisted only a couple of years later in November and December of 2020 on their respective platforms. But I'll get to that a bit more later. I want to talk first about the game's plot and its characters. So the plot of the game is that you are trying to survive for 30 days or less, depending on how well you do, in a very, very snowy environment where an impact winter has gone off several years earlier, and you are just desperately trying to survive alongside 4 other people and a robot. And the robot will assist you while you're out in the wild. Your main character, Jacob, is who you play, and Jacob will go out into the world looking for survival supplies, but he only has Acolyte to use as a radar towards the church. There are no other icons present immediately. You don't have like a standard video game map. The only thing you have is an old tourist brochure that acts as a physical map. But the map is outdated, obviously, because a lot of things are covered with snow now. So you have to kind of navigate by landmarks using that map. And Acolyte will kind of ping the location of certain things, but will always keep the church in plain view, but it won't tell you the best way to get there. It's just a general direction. You are helped by 4 characters: Blaine, Wendy, Maggie, and Christoph. Blaine will help you out by teaching you how to build better survival supplies so you can be out in the wild a lot longer. You can build campsites, you can build kind of fire pits, things like that. Wendy will help out by making sure that the team is fed more efficiently. She knows a lot of recipes, and she can learn a lot more. She can take a few ingredients and kind of turn them into full meals that provide better benefits, such as better staving off of hunger and better hydration, as well as making the team happier. Maggie will assist with kind of the defenses and efficiency of the church base, making it so that it's harder for other survivors to get in, making it so that like a central fire, it lasts a lot longer and things like that. Christoph is most important towards the development of Acolyte. Acolyte starts off pretty basic, but you can use Christoph to help build up Acolyte's inventory, such as like giving it a few more slots, because Acolyte's inventory space is a lot like Deus Ex and Resident Evil 4's inventory system, where it's an item takes up a certain amount of space in the inventory, and you only have so much space for items, even duplicate items. One of the other things that's really interesting is that the merchants of the game, they don't buy anything, but they'll sell to you, but the currency they exchange for is seeds. Seeds are a very big part of this game. Seeds are what they're trying to use to help rebuild the world, and it comes into the plot later on, which I won't spoil, but it is one of the central elements to try to rebuild our society after this impact winter. There's also a lot of dangers in the wild. You always are constantly trying to fight off hunger, thirst, like being unhappy, keeping warm, things like that. You are also trying to keep the others alive because they don't go out into the wild unless you allow them to. And they generally don't have that ability to until you pick up the game's perks at every kind of level, quote unquote. There aren't like, you don't gain any bonuses outside of like little perks that you can give to allies and even to yourself once in a blue moon, where they can kind of engage in certain behaviors, but they always have a downside. For example, if you tell a person to work more efficiently or faster, there's a chance that they could get injured as a result of working faster. So there's always a drawback to some of these. Some are more than others, but generally they always come with a downside. But it's how you can help kind of keep the base running much more efficiently. There's also wolves in the wild, there's other survivors you can help, but there's also kind of the problem of your inventory. Your inventory is probably one of the biggest issues you have to worry about in the game. You're constantly having to fight with the fact that you don't have enough inventory space to really carry everything, because there are a lot of large items that could be very beneficial. You also have to worry about bringing back food and water for everybody. Sometimes you are trying to bring back things that will make people happy, like books or comics or things like that. And you have to kind of really think about how you are managing your inventory. Because at first, your inventory space is very small. You can only carry a small handful of items, and you're going to be backtracking a lot. Especially if you find a good haul, like at a gas station, which usually has a lot of food and drink. And if you go to a house, you might find a lot of firewood, for example, or crafting materials. And you have to kind of work around making sure that that's all kind of taken care of. And that's where some of the things with Blaine comes in handy, because one of the things he can kind of help you learn is how to set up a base and set up a kind of a transit system with Acolyte going back and forth between the base and where you are while you sleep. That way you can get items back to the base without having to leave the wild or where you're at, because you might be somewhere where there's a lot of good items. And you also have to kind of worry about the rescue clock, as it's called, and how to reduce it. One of the things that is a main factor of the game is reducing the rescue clock. It ticks down naturally over time, but it's real time ticking down, like in-game time. And there are ways to reduce it. Leveling up reduces the rescue clock down a little bit, as does kind of doing certain events in game, such as helping people or turning on radio towers, for example, is a way to improve the rescue timer. And that kind of helps feed into the fact that you're doing everything you can to try to get rescued to you in a shorter amount of time. Because the more you're out in the wild, the more risk you expose yourself and the team to. Because eventually you're going to start finding it very hard to find supplies constantly, at least in close proximity to the base that you can walk to. Because there are a lot of environmental threats too, such as whiteouts. And a whiteout will completely wipe out your radar. And if you lose Acolyte in the whiteout, you lose access to everything Acolyte has, including a lot of your ways to check up on the team. And as well as this, if Acolyte runs out of battery power, you have to actually physically carry Acolyte back with you, and it's slow. And so you have an incentive to keep Acolyte powered up, as well as making sure that you're making constant returns back to base. Because Acolyte's abilities will take up its battery power quite significantly at first, but you can improve its battery power later on through Kristoff. But naturally, it will also tick down as well. And you have to make sure that Acolyte is properly taken care of, just like a member of the team. And Acolyte is very much a survivor alongside the rest of you. It has its own needs. It needs to be fed once in a while. And that's a pretty genius aspect, because a robot isn't going to last forever in a survival situation. It does need to be powered. And it's really, in general, it's a really cool game. It's a great survival situation game that kind of was hindered by a lot of technical issues at first when it first released for the Xbox One and PS4, which is extremely unfortunate that it got delisted in 2020. Because with the PS5 and Xbox Series, it got a drastic improvement in loading times, particularly. In the PS4 and Xbox One versions, the loading times were nearly 2 minutes for an area, whereas it's less than 20 seconds now for the PS5 and Xbox Series. And it's also unfortunate because of the delisting that people can't experience it with the better performance now. And delisting is one of the biggest threats we have to game preservation right now, because a lot of games these days are born only digitally. And because of that, we lose access to a lot of games that would otherwise be playable. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Grand Theft Auto. We've seen it with Sonic the Hedgehog. And now we've seen it with Impact Winner. And Impact Winner is more tragic because it only existed for a couple of years before it was made unavailable to purchase. Of course, you can re-download it if you already own it, but if you've never owned it, you can't purchase it now. And that's one of the biggest dangers to all digital gaming platforms or all digital games that never get a physical release. And sometimes games aren't given the privilege of having, say, a limited games run release. And that's kind of unfortunate because in this situation where a game doesn't have a physical release and is not considered popular enough for, say, something like a limited game release, then it's truly lost. It's lost to time because only a few people have access to it. And in this case, it's even more tragic because the improvements to the game with the better technology really helped kind of resolve a lot of the problems some people had with it at release. It is a pretty good survival game that was hindered by its technological limitations at the time. And we kind of have to kind of weigh that when we're looking at all digital games. Is it good to have all digital games? Is it good to have games that have an all digital component like DLC? And we have to kind of weigh that importantly when we're making a purchase like this. I made the good call to purchase this game on two different platforms, the PS4 and the Xbox One, when I first had it because I really loved the game. But people can't discover this game even accidentally anymore because it's not available in any form. It's not even available like, say, Game Pass or anything like that. And it's a big tragedy because this game is really good and it's kind of genius in some of the ways it executes and goes against the survival tropes. It brings it to kind of a more realistic feeling. It's a much more grounded survival game. It's less magical than a lot of survival games tend to be sometimes. It still has kind of some sci-fi magical elements to it, but it's not that absurd. You do technically have like a robot, which wouldn't exist in this time frame because it's set in kind of like a post kind of 2010s kind of setting, and that we really wouldn't have that kind of technology, but it's still, realistic in the way of how it's executed. And again, it's really sad that you can't play this anymore because it was born all digitally. And because it was born all digitally and died all digitally, it's just not something that people can discover on their own. It's not something you can discover even accidentally on their own. It's just gone. And that's truly sad because this is how a lot of games are going to end up. And we have to kind of recognize that because Impact Winner is truly a unique case in that it only delisted after a couple of years, but we've seen this with other games too, like Mario 35, the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. Not picking on Nintendo, but they do this a lot. And that's why we got to be more considerate with preservation. We have to look at more ways to preserve all digital content so that it is available for later generations down the road. Because if we don't preserve them, then that piece of culture just disappears. We don't get the chance to really kind of experience that anymore. And it may not be an important piece of history, but it is a piece of gaming history all the same. And I don't really want to end on such a downer note like that because, again, this is a great game. Impact Winner, if you ever get a chance, if they do ever re-release it, I definitely suggest playing it because with current technology, it has been made even better than it was before. And I hope you get the chance to play it someday because it's a great survival game. It's a very grounded one. It takes a lot of the tropes of survival games and kind of throws them out the window. It's just a beautiful game overall and it has a stellar soundtrack. I forgot to mention that earlier, but the soundtrack is done by Mitch Murder, who is a genius when it comes to synthwave. And he does some phenomenal work here to create a very atmospheric theme, as well as a moody soundtrack to go with this very kind of depressing and kind of horrible setting, but it also keeps it kind of hopeful with small themes. In the church, for example, is a very lighthearted and kind of hopeful theme that you will survive to the end. You will make it to the end of that 30 days. You will get rescued. And I hope, again, that you get a chance to play this game, because it is a wonderful, beautiful, and just well done survival game that was just kind of hindered by technical limitations. And it's just beautiful overall. Again, I'm Rorenado, and happy gaming, everyone.
Hey,
Oh, hey, Jeff.
what's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.